Greetings all from U. Well, actually, the presentation are all photographs taken at U at the observatory. But yeah, we're actually in my study in San Antonio because we know all this stuff we do now virtually. So pretend you're virtually at U, and we'll have a good program together. What I want to do with this slideshow, like I said, every one of the pictures was taken at U. And it's a combination of two things: pictures taken through the telescope at the U Youth Astronomical Observatory, and also a number of nightscape photographs, mostly taken by John Phelps. In fact, John's helped in the others too, but these were specifically taken by him. But it just kind of gives you a feeling for the place. And one of the reasons that we don't like to do that too is that U is an IDA certified dark sky park. It's the only one on private property in the whole country. Most of the others are, all the others are on either state or federal parks. And, but in order to be a dark sky park, you have to be open to the public, and we are. So that means that, and the thing that's nice about the Kerrville Friends of the Night Sky, which is tuned into this program as well, is that if Kerrville is ever going to be part of a dark sky reserve, you need to have a dark sky park close by. Well, that's U. We're within, as the crow flies, we're about 15 miles from Kerrville. And just, you know, we're technically at Mountain Home, but just outside of that. But very close to I-10, very convenient to the city. But the main thing is we have a mutually advantageous relationship, because in order for us to maintain our darkness to the level that we need to, then Kerrville must maintain lights that are no worse than they are now of the night lighting. Hopefully, they'll get to be better. Because when we first started getting our certification, which was back in 2014, we started taking measurements of the darkness of the sky then, and there's been there's a slightly more light now, not very much, but these things have a way of growing, and we would not like to see it getting any lighter when we look to the southeast. So that's another reason for talking about that. Anyway, what I'm going to do now is go to presentation mode and start showing you some pictures. Let's see. Robin, where do I do that? Oh, screen share. All right. You'll see the title here is Encore Virtual Star Party from U. And we're recording this on the 23rd of September. It'll be shown on the October the 6th, I believe. And we're recording, so it probably could be shown later too. The reason it's called Encore is because most of the pictures were taken before and came from other star parties. We did, at least I did, 6 star parties, virtual star parties during the summer. 3 for our summer youth camps, and then 3 more during the on-site hybrid star party that we did in August. So most of those photographs you've seen that have been if somebody watched all 6 of them, they've seen most of them, but not all of them. And I did add a few new photographs just for some contrast. One thing I would like to point out with the photographs taken at the observatory, all of the photographs taken through the telescopes were taken using DSLR cameras. Now we have some specialty cameras which can give us a little bit sharper images, but we've had some workshops out there showing people how to use these DSLR cameras to take their own photographs through telescopes. So we thought we would stick with that, and that's what you will be seeing now. So it won't look like the image you've seen in the magazine from the Hubble, far from it. But they're pretty cool, and we're also bound by the conditions of the nights when we take pictures. As you might figure out, since I said my studies in San Antonio, I live in San Antonio. The partner that I work with most often on these photographs lives in North Austin. So we have to figure out a time when we can converge on U, and we watch the weather, we go up there. But the weather is changeable. And like, for instance, this past Saturday, which was the 19th of September. The forecast was it was to be clear. It couldn't have been better forecast. What the forecast did not tell us is that we were going to have a tremendous haze from the West Coast fires that were all over the place. So even though it was clear skies, the viewing was pretty bad because of all the haze due to the smoke. So we got some pictures, but not nearly as good as we would like to have gotten. All right, so let's go ahead and look at the next slide. This is a picture that some of you may have seen before. Cliff Kaplan does presentations every now and then. I wanted to put this in there to give you an idea. This is weird. This is a shot taken on just with a camera on a tripod, looking southeast from U-Bar U. Well, that's Kerrville. And so, yes, the photograph was a time exposure of somewhere between 20 and 30 seconds. But the point is, and so this is a little bit exaggerated, but not much, because when you look over there, you'll see that glow. One of the fortuitous things that happened, and this is something you can't plan on, this is a meteor. I was just taking the picture, and all of a sudden, this bright meteor comes flying across the sky. So that was really kind of fortuitous. But this is what we're trying to do. We would like to make sure that this glow from Kerrville doesn't get any worse. So that's one of the reasons I put it in. Plus, it's a very nice picture. I took this picture under the guidance of John Phelps, who all the rest of them were taken by him. Okay. So now, this is this is called we talk about nightscape photography. John is really quite good at that. So what you see here's the Milky Way. This happens to be, that's Jupiter right there. So this photograph was taken on July the 23rd or 4th. We were there all night, so it was probably taken earlier before midnight. So anyway, that's Jupiter. Here's the Milky Way. This is the door of the observatory. You see the roof's back, and this was just a shot, but we had the red lights on inside there. So he just took a shot there. Now, this is pretty much the same shot, but in front of the observatory. Notice how much darker it looks. You obviously don't get the building and the lights in the way. But this is a gorgeous view of the Milky Way. Once again, that's Jupiter. We're looking pretty much southeast from the observatory site, which is pretty much at the northwest end of the campus. U-Bar U is 142 acres, of which about 12 acres is a campus that's under improvement. We got buildings, so forth, lodging and so on. But the rest of it's under wildlife management, so there are no lights anywhere out there. And by the way, all of our lights at U-Bar U, 100% of them are compliant with IDA recommendations. It means they're top shielded and none of them are hotter than soft white. And of course, when we're doing star parties and everything, we pretty much replace all the bulbs with red bulbs, so that even makes it better. Anything that's from soft white toward red, amber, that is cooler light, and so it doesn't scatter as much. Okay, so this is one of John's shots. I thought it was quite good. All right, this is another picture he took, but this time you see Neowise, the comet Neowise. This was taken back on June the 3rd. Now, this is a pretty good shot. There's the comet. I think this is it's a question of whether that's me or Donnie Bunch at the door, but anyway, that's one of us. Once again, this is the observatory. That's John's car there. This was, some of you, most of you got some chance, well, I shouldn't say most, many of you got a chance to see Neowise. And Neowise is an acronym. It stands for Near Earth Object Wide Range Infrared Survey Explorer. NASA's great at making up acronyms. But anyway, that satellite discovered the comet first back in March, and it was the summit originally was created was put up there to do a mapping of the sky in infrared. it did that. And they said, well, can we have it do something else? Well, there's been a concern for some time now about other objects striking the Earth, bigger than just the little tiny meteors that we see all the time. So they said, we need to kind of keep an eye on these things. And maybe if a large one comes into view, we can take some action to deflect it, hopefully. Maybe we can, maybe we can't. But so they changed the mission of the satellite, then start scanning the sky for near Earth objects. So one of the things it does, it picks up comets. By the way, if a comet is a pretty good size object, if one were to strike the Earth, it would be a bad thing. So fortunately, this didn't come anywhere near us, but there you are. It came near enough to be picked up by the satellite. So anyway, there it is. Okay, this is just a shot I threw in there that shows you some of the art that John Phelps has done with nightscape photography. This is a similar picture taken actually earlier, and not that time. This was taken last year. And what John did was he was down near the swimming tank, and there's the old tank has a windmill behind it. So he took a red light, shined that on the windmill, and then took a regular, just an exposure of the Milky Way. Well, it's a pretty good, cool looking thing he did. So this is just an artistic thing. If he had not shined the light, this would just have been a very dark image, but that's kind of pretty cool. And I think this particular photograph, he entered in a contest and placed. All right, now here we are, waiting to get ready to start at the observatory to take to start taking photographs. Here's Dunny Bunch, and here at one of the telescopes. That's a 16-inch Skywatcher Dobsonian type scope, and it's also, we will track. Both of these telescopes are what we call go-to, which means that once you align them on an object, it'll track. Of course, we have to get them aligned properly. But both of these are capable of tracking an object, for hours. So this is the Plane Wave telescope. That's the brand name. Is one that's designed particularly good for taking photographs. So that's what we use for all the photographs you'll see through the telescope. Anyway, here I am sitting out here looking at my phone, and that's Donnie's car out front. Notice the flap on the front of the observatory. This is so that we can get lower views of the southern horizon. So there's kind of a slot going in this direction here. And this is kind of a nice little feature of looking south. North is back up here. That's west. That's east. So anyway, there you are. And that gives you an idea of something about what the observatory looks like. We have another presentation, just a tour of the observatory, but this just gives you a couple of shots when we were waiting. That's the table set up. We had computer monitoring of the images and so forth. And I've already mentioned that all of our images will be used, will be taken with a DSLR camera. And this particular camera for this session, and most of the ones you'll see, was a Canon EOS 77D, which is a kind of a mid-range Canon DSLR. So we've done some workshops showing people how to do this, attach the camera to their own telescopes and take their own pictures. All right, here we are a little closer. There I am. This is Donnie Bunch. Like I said, I'm the one that pretty much operates the telescope. Donnie is a big help because keen vision. Donnie has years of experience working with manual Dobsonian type telescopes. So these are ones that have to be you track by hand, not with they weren't go-to. So he developed a really good sense of finding dim things in the sky. So Donnie was a huge help. Plus he's got younger eyes than John and I do, so that helps a bit. This is John Phelps. John is a professional photographer, and he does a lot of pro bono work for things like, groups like other nonprofits. So anyway, he's been a tremendous help. John is the one who really fine tunes the settings on the cameras, because the camera has to be set to manual mode. That means all these little extra features that a lot of people never pay attention to. He knows exactly to get the best shot out of that. Now, this was later in the evening. John took this picture. I didn't even know he did it. But there you see the Plane Wave telescope. Here's the camera attached. That's the Canon DSLR there. Once again, you still see Jupiter back there. So this was all those nights when you look southeast, you get pretty much the same view of the Milky Way. Here I am monitoring what's going on at the camera. I'm looking at, this gives us what we can do here on the computer screen is to show, we can get a live view of what the camera's looking at. At that particular time, I don't think that's what I was looking at. Probably checking on some of the settings. But once again, you get a good idea of what the plane wave telescope looks like. All right. Now, we've got several pictures of like I said, this was taken on June 3rd this summer, and we had almost a full moon. It was like a night, one day, but it was so nearly full. There you are. This gives you, the moon will show you a lot of different things. It always have the same face turned toward us. But depending on how much it's lit up, you will see, more markings of one kind or another. This shows you that one of the famous impact craters. This is Tycho. Up here you have Copernicus, and over there you have Kepler. Excuse me. So you see these rays when the object struck the moon, and typically these are not really old in terms of a astronomical time, because these so-called seas were lava flows, and so they cover up things. So this was a large impact, but by a large meteor, perhaps a comet, and that hit the moon, maybe, I don't know, 500 million years ago, something like that. And that's why you see these rays. But this is pretty typical picture of this type of thing. This is the one that's most dramatic of that type. So you see that the same sort of thing you see here with Copernicus. You don't see that much detail with the craters in here, but notice along the edge you will see craters. And so it's because you are able to perceive the craters because of shadows. So you're going to see as we move along, we get another picture of when it's not a full moon. Now this was taken, see how much more detail you see for craters? This was taken on July the 23rd this summer. Now this was a crescent moon. So it's pretty much the same pictures, but then you don't see all the other stuff. You don't see the rays, it's all blotted out. But you do see a great deal more in terms of the craters and the mountains and so forth. This was one that's kind of in between. And so this was roughly a half moon, but they call this a quarter, which is quarter phase and so forth. But you can see now, you can still see as you get near the line of sunlight, you see a lot more detail in the craters. Over here, they're kind of washed out. But these are pretty sharp pictures taken just with a DSLR camera. All right. Now, what I want to do now, these first few pictures, starting with the moon, are all solar system photographs. So this is a picture that we took, I think that was on the 3rd of June. We have most of the pictures you see were taken either the 3rd of June or the 23rd and 24th of July, since that was an all-nighter. But this is not too bad. You can see the bands well. These are 3 of the moons. There are 4 large moons, so-called Galilean moons, because those are the moons that he was able to see the first time he looked through a telescope. Well, it turns out that they orbit pretty fast, and so one of the moons is behind Jupiter. It's probably Io. This is Europa. This is Ganymede, which is the largest of the moon. It's, by the way, not only the largest of these moons, it's the largest moon in the whole solar system. No other planet has a moon quite that big. And then this is Callisto, which is not that much smaller than this. Ganymede is like 3,200 miles in diameter. Now that's about the size of Mercury. This one's around 3,000, so it's not a whole lot smaller, but it's a little bit. And then Europa is in Io are a little bit less. Now, this is a picture that I wanted to show you. This was actually taken, oops, I'm sorry, I got to get back to it. One of the reasons I wanted to show you this picture, look at this. You see that little black dot? That little black dot is a shadow of this moon. So as the moons are going or orbiting around Jupiter, depending where the sun is shining, you get shadows on the planet. So this was pretty cool. We look up there. Donnie noticed it first, that there's look at that shadow. And of course, it's kind of a nice little picture. So I included that, even though that's not this is the first time I've used this slide anywhere. But anyway, there you see it. You see the bands pretty well. And like I said, we actually have some specialty cameras that give you better, sharper images. But we tried to stick with the same thing we've been using. So like that's the whole thing. Don't forget to dance with them that brung you. So we've been using DSLRs for quite a while. Anyway, there you are. The next thing is this was taken on let's see, which night? Yeah, that was taken on the 23rd of July. Obviously, this is Saturn. You see the rings. You can see the separation between the two. This is the two major rings there. And it's a Cassini division there. We talk about it. You may have heard about that. You see some of the features on the planet, some of the bands, but it's not quite as sharp as we've had it. We've had some better pictures in the past, but like I said, you kind of have to take what the night gives you. And it's not bad. When you look through the telescope, it'll be a little bit sharper than that. And of course, this has been magnified a bit because when we use the camera, we only have about 50 magnification. So it looks like, to figure out the magnification you're going to get when you put a camera on a telescope, you take the focal length of a telescope and you divide that by the focal length of either the eyepiece or the camera. Well, the camera looks like it looks like an eyepiece with a focal length of about 50 millimeters. Well, the telescope, the plane wave telescope, has a focal length of, let's see, 2,540. So you divide 50 into 2,500, you get approximately 50. So when we're using eyepieces, we're using greater magnification than that. We usually start at around 100. And we can go up to much more than that. But when you enlarge a photograph, you bring in a little bit more distortion. So this would have, the image was actually much smaller than that. So this has been zoomed up a bit. But anyway, that is a decent picture of Saturn. Now we moved over to something that I wanted to show you all. I have a series of what's called double stars. When you look up at the sky and you see a star, it's not always really one star. Now, the two ways this can occur. One thing can happen is you can have stars that might be pretty far apart, but just happen to be, they look close together because of the line of sight. I mean, they could be hundreds of thousands of light years apart, and you really wouldn't know, hundreds of light years apart. This particular one, Albireo, is famous because it's so dramatic. You've got the gold, larger star, and then the slightly smaller blue star. It was only recently, but people have finally solved their argument. They were not sure whether this was just a visual double or what's known as a binary. And a binary double star, what's going on is you have two stars that are gravitationally locked around each other, and they orbit around a common point. So they form a little system, and actually you have some others that have more than two stars that are bound together gravitationally. It turns out that they finally decided this is actually a visual double, not a binary, but it is pretty. Oh, and where is it? This is the head of the constellation Cygnus, the Swan. So you look up there, you can see it, and it's fortunately it's visible a lot of the year, but all summer. All right, this is just an enlargement of that. This is the same thing. You can see what begins to happen with stars when you increase the magnification. Well, first place magnification, this magnification and intensity. When you increase the magnification looking at stars, it just gets brighter. You do not see, because they're so far away, you will never see the actual disk of the star. They just, with magnification would have to be tremendous to do such a thing, but they just get brighter. In this particular case, what we did here with this, we took a longer exposure. And so what happened here is the dominant star, you can see the spiking. but you still don't see the disk, although it looks like there's a around it. This just means the glow from it's more. And here's the secondary star. And notice that the other stars are still pretty good pinpoints. A little bit of distortion, not much. Okay, now this happens to be Regulus. Regulus is the alpha star in the constellation Leo. And it is not only a double star, it's basically a double-double. This is the alpha star itself, the main star. But then over here you have, it turns out that this one has a very, very tight binary that it's so close we couldn't show it. This star here looks like a single star, it's actually a pair. So two pairs of stars, and they also orbit around each other. So this is more than just it's like a binary binary. So, but it is a pair of two pairs of stars that orbit around each other. Now this one, you're going to have to squint really hard. You see right here, you see this bright star, and it looks like it has a little blue pimple. Well, this is actually Polaris. Polaris is a second magnitude star, and its little companion is like a ninth magnitude star. It's much smaller, but it's very close in astronomical terms. So you can barely make it out, but I hope you do see that. It is, so when you look at Polaris, the North Star, it's actually a binary. And this is, like I said, a physical binary. All right, now, what I wanted to do now is to move, let's see if I got my next slides correct, make sure I'm telling you when I want to do this. Okay, this is an open cluster. When we talk about star clusters, there are two kinds. There are open clusters and there are globular clusters. An open cluster are stars that are actually generally fairly close together, and they will eventually move out. A lot of times these are stars that were formed about the same time, and they aren't that far apart in astronomical terms. You know, maybe, but they will occasionally drift apart. This is the most famous one for most of us in the Northern Hemisphere. It's the Pleiades, the seven sisters. Now, it turns out that I couldn't get the entire picture. The Pleiades look better through a pair of binoculars or very low power. But when we had the field, our field was too restricted to show the whole thing. But the Pleiades itself, all of these stars are actually physically fairly close together. Not as close as a binary to be gravitationally pulling, orbiting each other. But in terms of other times you look in the sky, they're much closer together. And by the way, all of the stars that you see in the sky, every single star, is part of our galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy. We'll look at some galaxy pictures in a moment, but all the stars you see are part of our galaxy. Anyway, so this is an example of an open cluster. Oops. All right, this is actually a double open cluster, one here and one here. This is in the constellation Perseus, and you'll see these. We were able to. This is further away than the Pleiades, so we were able to see. You get a lot more of the stars in the image, so it's kind of cool. This is one, that's two, but it's a famous double cluster. Okay, this is a globular cluster. Now, I'm going to show you in the second picture the same thing. This is a single raw image. Most of the things we took, are only just a single image we took of the planet or the cluster or anything that you see. You can get more spectacular pictures if you will take multiple pictures close together and then and use stacking. And run this, which you stack the photographs, run them through a software program, which will go through and using statistics, figure out what to get rid of and what to emphasize. And so This was just a single raw image of the globular cluster in Hercules. It's also referred to as M13. That's for the Messier numbers. Messier was a French astronomer that was looking for comets. So he made a catalog of all these things that he saw in the sky that were not comets. It turned out it's much more famous for what they are than what they aren't. But anyway, M13 is in the constellation Hercules. And it's also referred to as the Great Globular Cluster in Hercules. Well, this is the brightest globular cluster that we see in the northern hemisphere. The brightest in the whole sky is Omega Centauri, which we don't normally see, well, except for a very brief moment in the summer. We can pick it up, usually low in the horizon. But it's much bigger and much brighter than this. This is, if you were to look in the sky, really good vision on a very dark night, like you might be able to see this. It's magnitude of like 5.8, almost 6 magnitude. It's not quite, but you know that's the limit of a human eye, is to see something that's 6 magnitude. So a few people with very, very sharp vision might be able to pick this thing out on a real dark night, no moon. Most of us don't. I certainly don't see it. Now, what the next slide is, this was what you see here. That's the same globular cluster, but this was a stacked image. We actually, you know, like sometimes when they do this, they take dozens, if not hundreds of photographs, but you want to take them close together to be able to manipulate them. We took 3 and then ran them through a program, and so this is what we got. So if you can look at that and then look back, that was a raw image of 1. This was what we got when we ran through the software program in post-processing. Looks pretty good. Okay, this is the Andromeda Galaxy. Now, it turns out that, you know, we live in the Milky Way galaxy, and it's turned out that there are they used to think, well, maybe there were hundreds of galaxies. It turns out there are billions of galaxies. As we've gotten bigger and bigger telescopes and look deeper into space, we find almost everywhere we look, there are just countless numbers of galaxies. But the Andromeda one is close to us in terms of astronomical things. It's like a little over 2 million light years away. And light years, of course, is the distance light travels in a year. Well, figuring that light travels 186,000 miles a second, that's a long, long way. Anyway, the Andromeda Galaxy, they've gone over the years. They've estimated the size of this thing. I remember early on they used to think it was a lot bigger than the Milky Way. Now they don't. They're not that different in size. But you know, how to pin these things down, I don't really know. Anyway, this is a picture. Now you notice that this was a time exposure of several minutes. Notice the stars are beginning to bulge out a little bit. So they're not nice, sharp little points. This is, of course, this is enlarged from the photograph we actually took, and there's slight movement. I was trying to make sure that our mount was tracking properly. Even a tiny difference will, after with an exposure of a couple of minutes, you'll begin to see this. This is another picture that we took. This was the other night. This was on September the 19th. And also this was a different camera. Notice there's less noise in it. It's interference. It's very dark out here. So this was about a 2-minute exposure. So anyway, you can begin to see the shape, the spiral. When you see the nice Hubble photographs, you'll see these things are really accentuated. But you can already begin to pick it up here just with a 2-minute time exposure. I noticed that the stars are pretty sharp, pretty tight. Now, this is a different kind of, people used to talk about nebulas. This is a gaseous nebula. This is probably the most famous one we see in the Northern Hemisphere. This is the Great Nebula of Orion. Now that's normally a winter constellation. So this photograph was not taken this summer. It was taken more likely like in January. And it's also done a little post-processing. The biggest thing here was the the color intensification. When you see it through the telescope, you won't see this because in the first place, this was time exposure. You won't see it that bright, but it will still be very bright. It's quite impressive, even with a pair of binoculars. But anyway, all it was had to do when John got a hold of this and it boosted the color a bit. And so this is pretty spectacular looking picture. And like I mentioned, it's a great nebula of Orion. Orion is the hunter that you'll see in the winter sky. Now, you know, if you'll stay up all night, you'll see it again early in the morning. But it's one of the most characteristic constellations in the sky. You know, most of the Orion is the hunter, and it actually, you can almost imagine a person we're looking at, the cover of the club, so forth. But you know, this and Scorpio and a couple of others, really, and Leo the lion, look like you could say, well, I see that. Some of the others, you want to know, what were they thinking? But this is a pretty good picture. All right, here is Orion here. That's the Orion sword. You catch a little bit of it. That's one of those. That's Rigel down here. So you can see that, make out a little bit. You did get the top end of it. But this is at the fire circle out at U-Bar-U. We have camps. The kids go and sit around the fire circle and we tell stories and things like that. And of course, the adults do it too. They get out, they tell different kinds of stories. But this is looking back there again. That's back toward Kerrville. But this is a really nice photograph that John took. And this was during our very last the star party we just had in August, which was a hybrid thing. We were fortunate enough to be able to have a few people out and keep them very separated safely because of the virus. But we did have some people on site. The rest of them tuned in virtually. They got to see some of the. We had all the presentations recorded on and shown on YouTube, so that was work. And these were shown on YouTube at the site too. We did not have on-site presentations as yet. But anyway, this is Orion. That's his belt. This is his sword. It's one of the feet. And like I said, that's once again the sky. This was taken very early in the morning, by the way, because in August you don't see that early. So John must have gotten up very early to get this picture. And this brings us back to the end. So that's pretty much all our slides. You see, this is the iconic windmill that's always you find at U-Bar-U. That's a swimming tank, which is kind of an interesting thing in itself. This was built by the original owners of the property. And it was, the bottom of this pool is just the natural rock. They just built a stone rim around it. It's around 35 feet in diameter. And it was a stock pond. Now it's a swimming tank. So works out pretty well. U-Bar-U as Killeen will too. I mean, it's not Killeen, as Kerrville will be right on the center line for the 2024 eclipse. So in fact, one of the videos that we were making available to people is a presentation about eclipses that was done at the star party this past August. You know, in a way, we welcome people to come out. It's like I said, it's a certified dark sky park. There is an admission, just like for a state park, to come out to U-Bar-U as to any park. And we charge the same thing as states. The parks do $7 a head. So we have, when we have star parties for kids at the observatory, we do not charge for the star party, just a fee to come out. If adults want a star party at the observatory, then we do charge them. Okay, I think that's pretty much all we have, and I appreciate you coming. I hope you enjoyed some of this, and maybe you learned a few things, and we'll see you around the area.